We are live. Welcome to my completely spoiler-free review of the 2015 video game Spirits of Xanadu, or SOX if you wish to abbreviate. So, yeah, there will be no spoilers whatsoever, even though that will be difficult because there's, really loved this game, and I'm not entirely sure about the age rating. I feel like let's go with mature. This video will be. So, let's see, and right, so yeah, since it's from 2015, I will judge it based on that. And let's see. Yeah, I played this through Steam. So this has a pretty effective hook. Basically, you arrive at the Xanadu, a spaceship that was deemed to be in need of repair, and you are the repair personnel. And you almost immediately realize there's something going on. You know, it's not just that the ship is in need of repair, and you will also, over the course of playing, find out why it is the ship is in need of repair. And yeah, it's a very effective mystery hook. Like, I mean, if you went ahead and got this, I don't know if it's still, well, let's see. From what I understand, this originated on itch.io. I don't know if it was free on there. I got it on Steam, but greatly discounted, as, that's how I get games. Yeah, I'm not certain if this was ever downright free, but whether you spent money on it or just the time to download or what, yeah, it's a ghost, hold on. It's a haunted mansion in space. That's one of the first things you find out about it. So, if that wasn't appealing to you, presumably you wouldn't be spending even time on it, even if not money. And yeah, I think that might just about. I was quite satisfied with the answers to mysteries and questions. The game felt somewhat like a prototype or like fan miniature recreation of System Shock 2, and I'm really here for it because that's one of my all-time favorite games. In no particular order: System Shock 2, Deus Ex 1, and Prince of Persia: The Two Thrones. And yeah, if it's not that every single thing that's in System Shock is in this in a smaller version, but a lot of it, and the stuff that isn't, it's usually stuff that you can understand why a game this short and small in scope comparatively is, yeah, why it's not present here. There isn't like upgrading and unlocking of new skills and such, and there are less guns and enemy types and such. But yeah, you're walking around this place trying to find out what exactly was it that happened. I am not going to give away exactly what happened in either, but in both it is sci-fi related. Um, yeah, I think that might more or less. I already mentioned Haunted House in Space. yeah, in both of them, you it's not as linear as a number of other games. I mean, even just like the right, yeah, both System Shock and System Shock 2 and this. I'm afraid I don't remember about System Shock 1. I only played that once, and I was not the biggest fan of it. I am going to play. I already have a copy of the remake. I am going to play that and do a video on it at some point. But yeah, yeah, even like there's like levels of Thief games by the same developer, System Shock 2. I forget, Looking Glass Studios maybe, that are more linear than System Shock 2. One thing I will say, as far as I could tell, in this one, in Spirits of Xanadu, you can pretty much go anywhere from the start. I guess it's possible that I did unlock stuff and just didn't realize it. But one thing about System Shock 2 is you can't go absolutely everywhere immediately. There's a bunch of places where if you try to go there, you'll be told, well, you can't go there until you fix this. And I mean, I didn't try to go to the very edge immediately in this, but if I don't know, it didn't seem like the things I did, because I wasn't like finding stuff that unlocked doors. I was doing other things that I wouldn't immediately guess that. Yeah. Um, I hesitate to call this game survival horror, because there's not that much of like, I'm not 100. First of all, I don't think I found every. No, I did not find every single gun. But what I did find, there was no ammo management, that just infinite ammo. And if there is health in this game, then we're not given the number. Um, yeah, there are items that seem to heal or hurt, and much like System Shock 2, yeah, drinking a soda will heal you, smoking a cigarette will hurt you. Let's see, I think. Right, and inventory. Inventory is also significantly more limited compared to System Shock 2. Again, understandable. But there are audio logs, and let's see, there's stuff you can interact with, even though it's like, that doesn't really help you, though. Just, for I guess is verisimilitude the word? It makes it feel more like you're walking around in an actual world. Um, but yeah, so I'm not sure if survival horror. There are definitely horror elements. Yeah, I'll get into those now. Let's see. But yeah, it has, certainly there's some first-person shooter going on, and that is one thing. This is definitely not one you want to play if you just really want a first-person shooter as a, like, um, with how few weapons there are and a few other aspects that I'm going to get into. Yeah, it's not so much. If you're not interested in the story hook, I don't think the game is necessarily. No, I say that's. I certainly don't think you should know more about the game than and about that aspect. Yes, so yeah, the player character. Did that sound dismissive? Almost nothing I say in this is going to be criticism. I am neutrally describing. I have very little negative to say about it at all. The player character, in the options menu, you can choose whether you want to play as a man or a woman. I don't know why I thought that would make more of a difference. It doesn't end up making very much of a difference. I think it's just like pain grunts. That's, yeah. Yeah, they're. I'm not going to give away exactly how. I'll just say that at least some of it is, for example, audio logs. But you do get a sense of the crew of the Xanadu. I'm not going to give away whether you actually encounter them or if it's just stuff like audio logs. So this does not have a huge amount of like features past like in some ways it's fairly bare minimum, but it works for the game. I didn't feel like cheated or something. And I didn't even know for a lot of playing this, I think I saw it on there, years ago. I don't know, maybe as much as 10 years ago. It's been a while since I visited itch.io. But no, for a while I didn't remember that it was itch.io at all, and I didn't feel let down by it. I think it was like maybe yesterday that I saw, oh right, itch.io. But yeah, basically, yeah, first person shooter with like down the what's it called again? Down the barrel, iron sights aiming with a slight zoom, and I really appreciated that. In part because it makes it much more, when you are reading stuff off screens in this game. Sometimes the iron sight is very useful for reading, and that is one feature that I've seen in some of these slightly more recent games. Didn't always used to be the case. I'm quite fond of it, and certainly wasn't the case in System Shock 2, and I don't. Yeah, well, like, was it even a thing in like Bioshock Infinite? I don't offhand think so. Normally, well, what it used to be is that if you're interacting with a screen in a video game, it will just open a new window, or the entire screen becomes, your monitor, the screen that you're interacting with takes up the entirety of your monitor or something like that. And here it actually just, yeah, whether you're like clicking on something or trying to read something, you can essentially move freely during that. And yeah, it feels more like you're in the world of the game. And I'm not saying that they should have always been able to do that. Technology progressed. I believe that yeah, my wrists are absolutely killing me, so I'm gonna. I believe that the amount of time it took me to complete was roughly the average. And yeah, I felt like it was, you know, I never felt like the game was wasting my time. Um, I always had, you know, yeah, the mystery and such were always developing very, very nicely, and I was like, one thing I really appreciate about this game, and that was something that also, yeah, over the course of this, it feels like the Xanadu would actually function. Like if I know that isn't the case. They didn't actually the following is not actually the case. They didn't literally like go to like NASA or SpaceX, if you still want to support Musk, and like ask, yeah, I know the game is 10 years old. Musk has been showing, some really, really awful qualities for quite some time now, including 10 years ago. But yeah, they didn't go to NASA and ask, can we take a look at, one of your spaceships for like deep space exploration to see how it works, and we can model, the one in our game after it. That's obviously not what happened. NASA wouldn't show that to game developers. But yeah, like, it's obviously far from the first fictional deep space spacecraft that has that kind of. But yeah, it genuinely did feel like the. Yeah. Um, and that was also something I noticed as, I'm there to repair, so I'm looking at, what's broken, and yeah, it feels like, okay, yeah, this is stuff that you would want someone to come fix. It's not like, I don't know, it's taking a while for the water to get hot in the shower. No, this is stuff that you're definitely going to want someone to fix. Now, yeah, the controls, by and large, the straightforward kind of, first person, WASD, with some keys for selecting weapons. Yeah. And let's see. So yeah, the gameplay is quite straightforward. Also, you are fighting the enemies, and there are. Let's see. I think. Yeah. There. You're investigating, and you're trying to fix the ship. So I'm not going to detail every enemy, but I will say at least some are robots. And, basically, yeah, the security system of the ship. And something I really appreciated. Yeah, there's several really great things about the enemy design. It doesn't have the largest number of individual enemy types, but each is distinct. And again, each feels like, yeah, this is the kind of thing you would have on, and yeah, I haven't watched Doctor Who, but I recognize a Dalek, like when I see one. Um, yeah. At least one of the enemies you can actually take out without great risk to yourself, and I really appreciate the yeah, and in fact, the very start of the game, basically introduces you to the concept that, you know, yeah, it's possible to. There's an off switch to the robot, and the AI is good. The you know I noticed that some of the enemies behaved slightly differently, which again makes it feel more real. And yeah, like you have to fight them in slightly different ways. If you go around just randomly, if you're the type of gamer who just fires upon if you see something moving, that's not going to, you know, you're going to run into some problems in this one. Uh, yeah, one more thing about AI. there are these smaller robots. I'm not 100% certain. Maybe like Roombas or something, because they certainly have roughly the size for that. I did notice that it is possible to shoot them, but I felt kind of bad because they're not doing anything, you know. If you choose, like me, to not shoot them, then yeah, sometimes you will hear a door open, and because you can't see it immediately, you won't know if that was a Roomba that you decided to spare, or if there's now an enemy nearby. So yeah, quite appreciate. That's a nice bit of yeah, having the player, you know, make that choice. I already mentioned that there is a limited inventory. Yeah, I mean, you can uh, reread and I think also re-listen. You know, yeah, you might find, you know, a piece of paper or two, and yeah, those get stored. And yeah, audio logs, and you can also see what what's the word, items you found in there. It's not like super fetch quest heavy, and I think I will just briefly note here, because there's a couple of things that don't fit into the overall. Yeah, I noticed that, you know, I didn't perish that many times in this, but it was more than once. And something I noticed, I think it was only twice, but both times it did not put me back to the most recent save spot, nor did it put me back to like an earlier area I'd been to at all. Both times that I respawned, it took me to a new place, and that place had enemies. So, you know, it didn't, my disorientation didn't last for long, because it's very easy to find maps in this. There, you know, that's something, it definitely does feel like, yeah, you know, it's scary and creepy, and there's stuff that's off-putting about it for you, sure, but like this was built to function, you know. So yeah, there's a lot of maps complete with the, you know, you are here marker. So it's very, you know, you'll basically never be lost for very long. You know, like if you're playing this game and you're like, where am I? Find a door, follow a wall. Soon enough, you'll find, you know, a map, and there's also plenty of saving stations. Although I guess if you've been following my recent videos on video games, you might know by now I do not, you know, I play for a maximum of 11 minutes in a row, and then there has to be a break of some time before. But yeah, I was never disoriented for long. But I appreciate that, yeah, you know, it's this thing of like, they're not gonna like force you to replay the you know, yeah, you know, you can choose to just load your progress, but if you don't, if you know, yeah, you'll pretty quickly be able to find your way back to where you were. It's not a very big ship. And yeah, then you are, you'll see that, you know, yeah, if you were fighting multiple enemies and you died on one of them, well, presumably you died on one of them, yeah, the ones you took out will still be gone, and yeah, so that's a good way to handle that in a way that's, yeah. And yeah, I've already talked some about the stuff that's great about the opening. One thing I thought it worked really well that, like, it's very clear, you know, hmm. Yeah, the fact that there is something that was unexpected. Yeah, yeah, that's as much as I'm going to say about that. Now, let's see. Yeah, I, I've talked some about the seeming lack of linearity. I'll just briefly say, as best I can tell, basically, like, there are certain things you have to do in order to complete the game. As best I can tell, it's entirely up to you the order in which you do them and how fast you do them. Let's see. And the atmosphere. I've already talked some about. I'll just briefly say it's very effective with the physical and social isolation, and the fact that, you know, there's just something, it does something to the human brain. It really, like, pokes at anxiety when you're seeing something that we built that used to work and now doesn't. You know, that's just something that really we don't like to see. You know, it's this thing of, you know, when things are going really well, we human beings can kind of get ourselves to think that we're unstoppable, that nothing we, you know, the things we make will last forever. And that's, of course, you know, it's useful for, like, you know, yeah, you know, evolution made sure that we were going to, because, like, the thing is, if you're part way through building something that's supposed to last and then you despair, you know, that might mean it never gets completed, and it might have been something that was necessary for the survival of the tribe. Yeah, the tribe is now doomed, because of, like, doubt, you know. So yeah, and I've said it before, I think it is extremely effective if, you know, like, don't force it into your game or such, but if you are able to make it work, like, if it doesn't, yeah, it can be extremely effective if your game that is set in space has a number of windows that the player can choose to look out of and see just the vast nothingness, you know. And yeah, there's not an awful lot in the way of, like, actual cutscenes. There's some in-engine stuff that's, well, yeah, all of the what there is of cutscenes is very effective. Yeah, the graphics look quite good. It's not, like, absolutely amazing, but it has a distinct look. And, you know, I mean, I mentioned, you know, one robot is like a Roomba, one robot is reminiscent of the Dalek. It didn't feel like they were, and you know, System Shock 2 inspiration. It didn't feel like they were just taking things from other games. The audio is good. You know, that's one of the most effective ways to scare someone is, you know, through, yeah, effective sound design and such. And yeah, you know, just like the doors, it's very clear that, like, the people who built the ship weren't trying to scare people, because like the door, yeah, it's a door, it's a, you know, electronic automatic door, whatever, you know. But when you are like, what's the word, when you are, when, you know, when you're seemingly alone other than robots that might, you know, attack you, yeah, suddenly the sound of a door opening and or closing can be, yeah. Yeah, that's another thing. You can hear both the opening and closing. So if you can control your nerves, yeah, like technically, okay, it's the, what's the word? Um, if you're especially worried about running into a big robot, you know, yeah, you can hear, oh, well, it closed almost immediately, you know, maybe it's just the Roomba that, you know, came through the door there. Let's see, I guess this is a perfectly fine place to put, the voice acting is quite good. Yeah, and I really appreciated, you know, I think there were just enough of the audio logs that once I started reading stuff they'd written on paper and emails and such, you know, I heard it in the voice of the character. And they do that really wonderful thing where you know, yeah, some of what you hear is them when things are, you know, going well, when the station is just operating. You know, at least one of the crew members has a sense of humor. There's this area where it says, you know, no eating in this area, and one of them like crossed out the no and then wrote yes. So now it says yes eating in this area. And one of them wrote a poem about breakfast, you know, and one of the others like graded the poem and then also the breakfast, you know, like they feel like real people, you know. But you do also hear at least some of, you know, after something went wrong, and the contrast is very effective. The music is really haunting. You know, one of the first things when you start up the game, you know, the opening screen does not show that much, but you do get like the what's the word, the uh, yeah, there's like an opening animation, and yeah, for a little bit you like you maybe have a sense of what the animation is showing, but it's not the most visual the whole way through. And yeah, thus what you have to really react to is some of the time the animation is pitch black, you know. What you have to react to is this really haunting music that just, yeah. So, as far as challenge goes, this has multiple difficulty settings. And yeah, like, I would not necessarily make this the very first, like, if you've never played a first-person shooter before, I mean, if you have enough patience, you can still get through this, because as I mentioned, you know, you'll respawn in another area. You might have to fight some enemies to get back to the area where you perished, but, you know, it's much more forgiving than a lot of first-person shooters. And let's see, I saw a video clip of someone playing on a harder difficulty, and yeah, it definitely provided a challenge on that level. And let's see, I think that might be about it for that. So, yeah, it is engaging to play, you know. This is one of those, you know, sometimes reviews will state that the world of a video game is empty. And I'm really glad that they took great care to not let that be the case here. You know, like, I watched the ending credits. There were not a huge amount of people working on this game, and yeah, no area of the game just feels like completely empty. Like there's at least one where there's not what there is to interact with is based around the goals of like if you do the thing, if you interact with everything in that room, it'll get you a good bit of the way towards completing the game. No room was just completely empty. No room had nothing to interact with, or at the very least, like you could look at and be like, oh, okay, this really, I mean, rooms are marked, so it's not like you're going to be guessing what a room is for, but yeah, it felt like, okay, this actually is a real place. So I did not get all of the achievements. I did see someone say that you don't have to play it that many times to get all of the achievements. And it definitely is, like, some of the achievements are genuinely just like, hey, we made this world, play with it, have some fun inside this world that we built. Let's see. Right, I also really appreciated, certain things that really made it feel like, you know, like this is a place where people live and work for extended periods of time. There are, so the concept of the art terminal also appears in System Shock 2. I don't know if that was the first play. It probably wasn't. I can imagine it wasn't, but the it actually sounds like something I could imagine Philip K. would have written about. Right, Philip K. Dick. I did say it was going to be a mature video. Yeah, but yeah, the fact that the crew quarters have art terminals, and something that I did really appreciate, and that is something, it's been years since I played System Shock 2, which feels horrible to say out loud, but from what I recall, in those, it tended to be, oh, it's like classic art, it's just straightforward, In this, one of the crew members is from East Asia, and her art is East Asian, so that was a good, I don't remember the others. Certainly they had more Western names, so yeah, and the art terminals, yeah, and let's see if one of them's like into movies, and he had like posters, and he was like writing a review on the computer. These things that just, yeah. And there's also this like hologram room where you can like experience, it's fairly simple, but there's a thing or two where you can experience something you experience on Earth, that sort of thing, to alleviate melancholy, maybe. I forget what the word is. So replayability, there are multiple endings. I was originally going to try to get each, because I'd read somewhere that, if you save before the point of no return, you can get them on just one playthrough. I'm not saying every game has to have that. There's some games I love where you can only get, some of the Kyle Katarn games, you can only get certain endings if you play the game all the way through multiple times. Right now, I'm not playing games more than once, much at all, on account of, bad wrists. So, as Right. I skipped a step there. Let's see. Skip right ahead to profit. Yeah, I read that you can do it in, without having to play the entire game over, because you can just load. Once the end credits were done, it did not let me load. It just had the, start over button in the menu. It is possible that I accidentally saved after the point of no return instead of right before it. Maybe you will have to play all the way through it in order to get the alternate endings. I wouldn't rule out maybe somewhere down the line, but I'm not thinking it'll happen soon. I have no idea which of the ending, if I got the main ending or an alternate ending or what. I will say I absolutely love the ending I got. I did not run into any bugs or glitches. The level design is quite nicely done. You'll be spending some time in hallways, connecting rooms and such, but there's also little shortcuts through grates and such. Those wonderful, not sure they exist outside of fiction, air ducts and such that are large enough for human beings to move through. And yeah, the environmental storytelling is really, really good. So, I have not talked much about the puzzle design, and that's because that's, yeah, I forget if there's a reason for it, but I put it near the end of the overview I have that reminds me of what I want to talk about when I talk about video games. This game arguably doesn't particularly have puzzles. I'm not sure if I'm the only person who uses the term, but I like to say instead of puzzles, what you have here are tasks. Yes, the player has to do certain things in order to proceed and complete the game. But they're never really difficult. I suppose one could qualify as a very simple puzzle. But it really is just you basically just brute force it essentially. There's a little bit of oh, okay, this is what you're supposed to do, and then you just kind of do it. You might have to try out a couple of different things before you're able to do it, but that's it. And again, I'm not saying that as a problem. It's just worth keeping in mind if you really badly want something you play to have puzzles. And yeah, the things you have to do in order to complete it do feel like the kinds of things that make sense for that's something that was broken in the ship, and you're here to fix it, and it's something that I already mentioned needs fixing. And the let's see, the way you fix it also feels and you get this what's the word, there was one point where I was going through it, and I don't know, it's just for some reason I kind of forgot what is it supposed to be doing, and the computer, the in-game computer voice, helpfully told me, this area is, I'm not going to mention which area, but I'll just, it mentioned an area and said, it's in need of repairs, which, again, that's the kind of thing you would want to have on a ship like this in real life. You would definitely want it to say, guys, we're going to have to do something about this, so, yeah, very nicely done there. And, the I did not expect to talk about this game for this long, but yeah, it really worked for me. Yeah. I think I've said absolutely everything by now. So, I rate this an 8. You know, repairs needed for an eerily empty, dark spacecraft out of 10.